know there's a bunch of ridiculous moments in pro wrestling, and we talk about them all the time, but there's others nobody brings up enough, and that's what I, Simon Miller the Bald Idiot, wanted to address today. The first one I'm going to do made me laugh out loud, and it randomly popped up on my TikTok, which inspired this entire video. I was like, oh my gosh, I have got to talk about it. And of course, if you laugh or enjoy yourself at any point in this video, please do hit the subscribe button, because it's good for engagement, it's good for my YouTube journey, and to use all of those silly 2025 words. But for the meantime, I am the man named Simon Miller, and this is 10 ridiculous wrestling moments nobody ever talks about. Number 10, this is the one, right? And you probably won't get this, or maybe you do. WrestleMania 39. As we know, Edge was about to have a match, and he was going to have a big WrestleMania match, and he comes out as Brood Edge, right? Now, it comes up on the Titantron's a big screen. It says Brood Edge, and Brood is written in like funny, bloody letters, because of course Brood Edge is Scary Edge. There is no one called Brood Edge, right? When he was coming out in, 1997, 98, whatever the flub it was, with Gangrel and Christian as part of the Brood, nobody said, there's Brood Edge. It was just Edge. The reason this made me laugh so much is because it kind of shows how stupid WWE thinks its fan base is. It's like, well, if he just comes out as Spooky Edge, nobody will know what we're talking about, even though he had the old gear on. Now, it is brilliant because he comes out to Slayer and it's a super cool thing. Probably the coolest thing you've ever seen in your damn life. But for one, again, the logo for Brood Edge is like a cartoon. And also, it would like me calling myself Haired Simon Miller before I went bald, right? You'd be like, what are you talking about? You're Simon Miller with hair. You don't need to brand everything. I was like, only wrestling. Only in wrestling would you do this. The commentators could have sold this. They could be like, oh my gosh, Edge, he's gone back to his Brood times. And they do that, to be fair. But it just killed me. It's just so silly. And nobody would ever do this in any other form of entertainment. They would trust their audience and they would trust their fans. But when it pops up on the screen, it made me laugh out loud, mostly because I quite clearly have a bizarre sense of humor. But you don't need to file everything in a cabinet so specifically. But yeah, it is ridiculous, and we should never have done it, even though that was pretty damn cool. All right, going back in time, 1998, June 22nd, Raw. I remember laughing at this at the time as well. Now, I do have to say that it's kind of controversial, and I'm certainly not laughing at people that have to use voice boxes, okay? If you find yourself in that kind of predicament in life, I have nothing but, well, you don't need my sympathy, but I would have sympathy for you. I can't have empathy, of course, because I wouldn't necessarily understand it. But after Kane had debuted in 1997 and was a mute, somebody must have thought, well, he's got to cut some kind of a promo. But very sadly, we've told everyone he burned in a fire and he has no vocal cords, so they gave him a voice box, right? And he puts it to his neck. And of course, it's before he was going to take on Steve Austin, the first blood match. And he says to Steve Austin, the blood on you this Sunday will be for real, which is an unhinged thing to say, and you would go to jail for. Now, it's kind of freaky at the time. I was but a fetus when I was watching this. I was a young child. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm scared of Kane. But it's how we look at it now. This is when the ridiculousness comes in. Because when did he unmask? 2002, was it? Whenever the Flub Kane took his mask off, it was revealed these were psychological issues. That is how WWE got out of this. This was the caveat that they threw in there. But then why the Flub was Kane using a voice box in 1998? Now, you will say, Simon, it's because he felt like he had to do that. It's still pretty damn insulting, if I do say so myself. Like, somebody must have known this was true and gone, listen, Glenn, it's a really bad idea. We shouldn't have done this. Go and watch it for yourself if you've never seen it. There's clips all over the internet, and the absolute worst part, in fact, maybe I should have put this in as opposed to the first time he used it. A year later, when he teams up with X-Pac, maybe it was later that year, actually. No, it must have been in 1999. But he's teaming up with X-Pac. They got a friendship before it all went bad, and Kane goes to use it, and X-Pac takes the thing and throws it away. You don't need to use it, man. And then Kane goes, "Suck it." It's the weirdest voice you've ever seen. This was meant to be a scary monster, man, and we turned him into some kind of a snake. All right, number 8. We go to the year 2000 in WCW, which many people say is the worst 12-month period for any promotion in the history of wrestling, and I can understand it as well. It was Booker T taking on Big T. And Big T, in case you don't know, was Ahmed Johnson. It was very curious why he got hired by WCW during this time, especially because as Ahmed Johnson, he'd left the WWE in somewhat controversial circumstances. And here's what I don't understand. Now, this did make sense at one point. Stevie Ray was involved, and because it was 2000, new millennium, they were going to start a new Harlem Heat faction, but Booker T and Stevie Ray fell out about this, and Big T was going to be able to join in. So the winner of Big T versus Booker T at Super Bowl 2000 would get the rights, essentially, to Harlem Heat, and they were a legendary tag team at the time, when from nowhere, all of a sudden WCW decided, well, we're going to include the rights to the letter T as well. And that would mean whoever lost would lose the T, so Booker, who did actually get defeated, would just be Booker, but it would mean the big T would be big. So the commentators would have to go, oh, here comes big, which is not a euphemism, and honestly, you can go watch this right now. It's about 5 minutes and 48 seconds long. It is atrocious. The lights go out when they come on. Cassius, it's just the ring apron, but not even the commentators know who Cassius is, no to the fans. So he just gets involved. He doesn't even get involved. He just looks at Booker T, who then gets Pearl River plunged. 1, 2, 3. Not only did he lose the rights to Harlem Heat, he lost the T. It's like an episode of Sesame Street. Why didn't Elbow pop up and go, oh, I can't believe it? There was happened to Elmo there. But can you believe it? The letter of the day just so happens to be T. And look, it's not like Booker T didn't find himself in crazy positions like this before, because when he fought Edge at WrestleMania, that was over the Japanese hair commercial, right? Which is also dumb. But this is just unreal. And when you get people popping up to silence because no one actually explains who they are, why they are here, I mean, it got worse because Booker T then became G.I. Bro because Vince Russo was totally mad, before eventually he just became Booker T again. And he didn't win the T back. Essentially just went, you can be Booker T. This was atrocious. Number 7, we jump to 2006 WWE. It's when the Boogeyman essentially debuted. There'd been plenty of teases before this. That's Jillian Hall, right? As you can see, she has a growth on her face. Now, maybe this was meant to be an homage to Austin Powers 2. I doubt it because it was so far removed. But look at the growth, whatever the flub it is. That is the laziest, crappiest prosthetics I've ever seen in my life. We only gave it to Jillian to belittle her. Let's not pretend otherwise. This wasn't done to enhance her character. When the Boogeyman walked in and ate the growth. That's right, he strips it off her face and he eats it because he was meant to be a spooky wooky man, and of course he ate a bunch of worms too. Some people say they were real worms. I like to pretend that's not true. Don't you come at me on social media as you do every day and say, Simon, wrestling used to be way more serious in the past. 2006, 19 years ago, and somebody called the Boogeyman ate a mole off Jillian Hall's face. If you think that's the height of sports entertainment, good for you. But look into my eyes, I'm not a happy man. Number 6, TNA, 2002. Now, don't forget, this is when TNA was brand new. So if you were trying to sucker somebody over to watch a pristine promotion, you better have some good stuff. And they had the Dup Cup. Now, this was the Cup brothers. No, excuse me, this was the Dup brothers, one of which would go on to become Trevor Murdoch, who you probably know from WWE. So it's not like they were nameless warriors. And they decided to win a wrestling match. It should be based on a point system. You had to get to 10 points, I believe it was. And you would get 2.5 points for using a weapon. You would get 2.5 points for using a table. If the table was on fire, it would go up to 5 points. I believe a fan could pass you a weapon, and that would get you some points as well. But I would ask you to Google this today and read about getting 2.5 points for the use of an animal, and then really go into that wording. Now, it's up for debate, I suppose, what they do mean, but it certainly leans into things that to me sound massively illegal and massively immoral too. Which begs the question, who was TNA trying to get through the door with something like this? Because if I run a wrestling promotion and I snuck this into my storyline, it would be the exact opposite of the audience I would want to attract, especially for longevity. How the flub did they make it 23 years? Although you can't put on TNA now what TNA did in 2002, but this is disgusting, and this is totally horrible, and it's the worst thing ever. You can Google it, man. Like I say, you probably go on Daily Motion to watch this stuff, but even TNA dropped this after a few weeks. I presume it can't be Vince Russo because I don't think he was there at the time, but I just shake my head. And I remember it from back in the day. I deleted this from my brain, so this one actually should stay buried under a bunch of rocks. But maybe, genuinely, the worst thing that anyone has ever proposed in terms of professional wrestling. 1991 WCW always makes me laugh because they enjoy doing crossovers, one of which we're going to talk about later. I would love to put the RoboCop stuff in here, but I can't because everybody knows about RoboCop and Sting. Absolutely hilarious. But quite clearly they thought they had a market here for make a bunch of money. So they rang up Marvel and they said, we'd love to have Spider-Man in pro wrestling. And Marvel went, go away. Because of course they did. They didn't want anything to do with that. That would have been absolutely redonkulous. So WCW found Brad Armstrong, who was a very good wrestler, by the way. He wasn't some joke dude. And said, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put you in this costume, the worst costume you've ever seen in your life, that looked like I made it in the middle of the night with my eyes closed. We're going to call you Arachnaman. That's right. That's what they did. They called him Arachnaman. They didn't come up with any other name. They didn't come up with something where maybe they could pretend, oh, we just happened to come across this. They essentially called him, they should have called him Man Spider, right? You could have called him Man Spider. Spider. And do you know what happened? WCW rang them up, not WCW, Marvel rang them up and said, you told us you wanted to do this. And we said, no, this still infringes on our rights, you absolute goobers. And they threatened to sue them, and Arachnaman died. I mean, honestly. This was 1991. A few years later, the NWO was going to be running wild, and you can kind of see the connective tissue here. Sure, in the middle of it all, WCW was awesome, but 1991, absolute redonkulous, and the year 2000, also absolute redonkulous. I'm going to repeat my catchphrase for this video. Don't walk into my house and say wrestling used to be more serious. It's always been dumb. And we'll stick with WCW from around the same period too. You will have heard of Cactus Jack. You know Mick Foley, and Cactus Jack in terms of a brawler, and being an unhinged character was right up there because Mick Foley just totally understood gimmicks and personalities. And this is when he was dropping the elbow off the ring apron too. It's kind of hard to get across now, but people couldn't believe at the time it looked so devastating and essentially destroyed Foley's hip. But after taking a horrific powerbomb from Vader, WCW said, right, Mick, here's what we're going to do. Cactus Jack now has amnesia. Now, you know, you can maybe take something like that and tie it into a more dangerous version of Cactus Jack. This is professional wrestling, and anything that has any sort of sensitivity is like a shovel right to the face. So we did these skits, which again, you can go and watch and make your own mind up, of Cactus Jack just walking around acting like a buffoon. And we can say that because Mick Foley came out in interviews afterwards and said, yeah, this is not how I wanted to portray this guy whatsoever. But the real caveat, and maybe the thing we forget about, is he even told his friends, or at least pretended to his friends, oh, I have amnesia, I can't remember anything. And his friends were worried about him before WCW dropped this angle. And the way they explained it was, oh, he just wanted to get in the head of his opponents. This was mind games. And that would have been fine, or the very strange for a somewhat babyface to do. But again, Cactus Jack had told his buddies, his loved ones, the people he found close in his life, the same thing, which means he was lying to them to get one over his rivals, as opposed to focusing what matters on this life, which are your friends and family. This is why WCW was so nuts in the early 90s. They never thought about any of this stuff. They threw out ideas and they got rid of them. And the ramifications were absolutely huge. But after a while, the fan base got so used to them, I don't actually think they thought about it. And neither do we in 2025, which is why I wanted to bring this one up. Because good guy, happy guy, was never really a good guy, but somewhat on the babyface side of things, Cactus Jack lied to his friends because he wanted to be more successful in professional wrestling. Right, let's continue on with these tie-ins from WCW. 1998. This one, you have to see to believe it. It is unreal. I'm sure that WCW got paid a bunch of money, but given that a new Chucky movie was out, when Rick Steiner and Scott Steiner were feuding, Rick Steiner was in the ring cutting a promo with Mean Gene when Chucky appeared on the big screen. Now, all Rick Steiner does is say, have you got something to say to me? Why don't you just say it? As Chucky says the things. He is threatening them. He basically says he's going to kill them, and nobody has clearly clued up Rick Steiner that Chucky's comments are pre-recorded, so he's just talking over them all the time, which makes this such an awkward segment. But the thing I think we need to bring back up into a 2025 consciousness is that Chucky says, Scott, Rick, if you go after Scott, who they were feuding at the time, like I say, he's the leading man in my next movie. So if you lay a finger on him, I'm going to murder your ass. So many questions. 1, why would Scott Steiner be the leading man in a Chucky movie? 2, why would Rick Steiner be scared of Chucky? 3, why did Scott Steiner need protection from Chucky in terms of Rick Steiner? This was Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner, essentially, who was a crazy man, who was a loon that loved to kiss his biceps, but apparently here he needed a possessed doll to take care of him. It's so bad. And I like dumb stuff in wrestling. I like goofy wrestling. It is for life. And you can get something from this in terms of being entertained. I couldn't be more entertained. There's nothing else you could give me that would make me laugh as much. But in terms of a segment that you would probably try and show non-wrestling fans, which this was designed to do because it was essentially a mainstream movie, honestly, go watch it today. Go watch it right now and then come back, watch the rest of the video and leave me a comment and let me know what you think. It is unbelievable. Number 2, we stick with WCW and we jump to 1999, and I would take the word ridiculous here and I'd throw it out the window because this one is actually more offensive, which is another reason why we need to talk about it, so we never do it again. Now, I wanted to get on a pole match in here, but you can't do Viagra on a pole because people have talked about that and everybody has talked about Judy Bagwell on a forklift, which is the funniest match of all time. But in 1999, there is a Pinata on a pole match where WCW essentially takes all its cruiserweights, and do not forget, it was the cruiserweight division that made the undercard in WCW so successful, to the point even when the main event shipped the bed, they were able to make a card worth watching because they were so good. And they essentially take all the Mexican guys and take the mick out of them, right? It's genuinely insulting. It's genuinely terrible. Nobody would do it now. The winner got $10,000 and they celebrate like, oh God, it's changed my life, even though they were meant to be well-paid professional wrestlers. And just to top it off, Ed Ferrara is on commentary doing his Oklahoma impression, which is just the worst thing of all time. He's meant to be Jim Ross, complete with Bell's palsy, which again, to repeat all those words, is terrible, is insulting. It's just done to be mean. Like nobody was tuning in to see a crappy Jim Ross impersonation and insulting somebody that we all quite like and, put on a pedestal as the best commentator of all time. But it's crazy to me this has been forgotten, because you can be sad about the death of WCW in 2001, but they were doing this, and I think it was late 1999. This is the kind of stuff they were putting on. I mean, they were basically alienating half their audience, but a big percentage of their audience, and forgetting the lifeline that those guys had given WCW when it was crawling back up to the top. And believe you me, there are some terrible WCW main events. And the only reason you would go back and watch those pay-per-views now is because what these guys were doing on the undercard. It's no wonder Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio wanted to leave. This one is pants. And we finish with number one, which is WWE. In like 2001, 2002, so we're talking Attitude Era into Ruthless Aggression Era, and they actually did this. So once again, don't you tell me WWE was better back in the day, although you can also argue this is brilliant depending on your tastes. But Perry Saturn was involved in a match where he got smacked on the head, and once again, wrestling decided to lean into the whole brain trauma type of thing, when he saw Terry Runnels, who was meant to be his valet, and decided she had become a mop. Now, I do not mean he saw Terry Runnels and in his head he saw a mop. I mean he saw a mop, a literal mop, and decided that was Terry Runnels before he fell in love with her. Look into my eyes. There's no jokes here. You can see this right now. After a while, he put a face on it. After a while after that, he put a wig on it. It was widely insinuated they were having relations. How that works, I do not know, and I don't want to know, before Raven, who was feuding with Perry Saturn, threw the mop into a wood chipper and killed her. I mean, whatever you want to say. It begs the question why someone didn't just, build a new mop for Perry Saturn to fall in love with. But he was genuinely crushed, and he had to fall to his knees like, why has somebody killed my mop? And all of this was played for laughs. So what? Now, this one probably is a bit more famous because it's so absurd, but this was 2001, arguably the height of WWE, the height of pro wrestling, if you want to make that argument. And this, this is what we were doing. So I think sometimes it is good to get this into modern day chatter, just in case you are watching a Raw or a SmackDown or a Dynamite Collision and you want to make the term, well, it used to be better back in the day. And I would say that to you, my friends, and follow up with, was it though? Was it really? This one, there's no other word for it, was utterly insane. Now, I'm sure you've got a bunch of other ones you can drop me in the comments below, and please do, because it will make me laugh. I mean, a lot of these are absolutely hysterical. And then when you are down there, like the video, share the video, subscribe, click the video on the screen to get more nonsense from me. I would appreciate it. Otherwise, you can watch my watch-alongs, obviously, at patreon.com/Simon316. Grillermind.com/Simon for a range of supplements that will help you in the gym and all your fitness goals. They're brilliant. Use code Simon to get percentages off. Come say hello on social media at Simon316, and it's Simon on TikTok, Simon on Cameo, Simon at Big Cartel, and Simon at Pro Wrestling Tees. All the support is massively appreciated. Have a lovely day, my friends. Goofy Wrestling for life. Speak to you soon.